1 year of life or $1 billion, which would you choose? Old Vin was a man worth hundreds of billions. But his time was nearly up. He lay dying on his hospital bed, surrounded by his sons, all waiting in silence for the inheritance. Suddenly, a strange man appeared out of nowhere. He pulled out an old pocket watch, gave it a slight shake, and right before their eyes, the old billionaire's remaining lifespan appeared, only 5 minutes left. The man remained calm and introduced himself as a time merchant. He offered a deal, for just 1/5 of their annual income. They could buy the old man 1 more year of life. The eldest son immediately objected. Even 1/5 of their earnings would be over $1 billion. But the old billionaire raised his hand and whispered one word: live. Upon hearing this, the time merchant summoned a contract out of thin air. He walked over to the hospital bed and said, "As soon as you sign this contract, it will take effect instantly." But there were only 10 seconds left. To everyone's astonishment, the man who had been bedridden for over a year suddenly sat up. In the final second of his life, he grabbed a pen and signed the contract. Vin Nia Hu. The contract transformed into a glowing stream of light that merged with his body. Even his frail, bony hands suddenly regained color and strength. Feeling life returned to his limbs. The old man immediately wanted to buy more time, but the time merchant had vanished, leaving behind only a payment receipt. The old billionaire believed he had just encountered a true master of the mystical arts. He warned everyone to keep their mouths shut. But what he didn't know was, the man he thought was a legendary sage had just been worrying about red money the night before. His name was Luke Lee, an ordinary office worker. Just yesterday, while heading to work, Luke noticed something strange. A man walking ahead of him had a 3-second countdown floating above his head. Luke froze. Then, bam, the man was struck by a car and died instantly. And then the impossible happened. Everyone around him now had floating countdowns over their heads. At first, Luke thought he was hallucinating. He rubbed his eyes and blinked. But the numbers remained. Then he noticed something else. A pocket watch had appeared in his hand. He pressed a button. The rain froze mid-air. Had he stopped time? Luke reached out to touch someone nearby. They didn't move. But the moment he pulled his hand back, a green light emerged from their body, and their countdown dropped by 10 minutes. He was stunned. Could he actually control time, and even manipulate people's lifespans? He tested again, this time aiming the energy at a girl. Her countdown increased. Luke was thrilled. He had awakened a supernatural power. Who needed a boring office job now? He was ready to rise above everyone. But then reality hit. This power didn't pay the bills. What was the use of controlling time if he couldn't even afford rent? Then he had an idea. He withdrew his entire life savings, 30,000 yuan, and went to the park, looking for people in desperate need of cash. Soon, he spotted a college student handing out flyers. The student had been working 3 part-time jobs just to buy expensive gifts for his girlfriend, but still hadn't earned enough. While the student stood there in despair, everything around him suddenly froze with a soft click. Panicked, he looked around, trying to escape. Then Luke appeared before him and introduced himself as the time merchant. He threw down a suitcase stuffed with money and said, "I'll give you 30,000 yuan in exchange for 1 year of your lifespan." The student stared at the cash in shock. Was that even possible? Luke noticed his hesitation and flicked his hand. The student's remaining lifespan appeared above his head. 65 years and 126 days. Luke pulled out a contract and said, "You have 10 seconds to decide." Memories of his girlfriend flashed through the student's mind. He clenched his jaw and signed. In the next instant, the contract dissolved into a golden light and merged into Luke Lee's body. The countdown above the student's head dropped from 65 to 64 years. The transaction was complete. Luke could barely contain his excitement. He had just bought 1 year of life for 30,000 yuan. And now he could sell it to a billionaire for 1 billion. He couldn't wait to find his next customer. As fate would have it, while riding a taxi, Luke overheard the driver talking about his critically ill father who urgently needed money. The moment Luke stepped out of the car, he quietly left behind 2 stacks of cash and a slip of paper. "If you ever need money, you can come to me. But next time, it'll be a transaction." The taxi driver was overwhelmed with emotion. Bowing deeply, he thanked Luke Lee from the bottom of his heart. Feeling satisfied, Luke Lee returned home in a good mood. As he entered, he heard an odd noise coming from the living room. There, lying passed out on the sofa, was a young woman, clearly drunk. She wasn't his girlfriend. She was his housemate. Concerned she might catch a cold, Luke Lee grabbed a blanket and gently draped it over her. But unexpectedly, she stirred, and upon seeing him, she scowled, assuming he had ulterior motives. With a light scoff, she turned and walked straight back to her room. Luke Lee wasn't surprised. He knew exactly how she saw him, just another broke nobody. She was chasing after rich men, and to her, he didn't qualify. Watching her close the door, Luke Lee let out a sly smile. I wonder what kind of face she'll make when she finds out I'm actually rich. The next morning, Luke Lee visited a real estate agency owned by Duong Chan Nhi. He had decided it was time to buy himself a proper home. Chan Nhi was friendly when she saw him, likely out of old acquaintance. She offered to show him a few modest, budget-friendly apartments, but to Luke Lee, they all looked like rundown, low-end dumps. Without hesitation, he said, I want a villa. Chan Nhi's expression changed instantly. Her tone cooled, and she muttered, I don't have time to joke around, before handing him off to a junior agent. The new agent had barely started speaking when Luke Lee pointed at a listing. That one, the most expensive villa, 50 million. Everyone in the office froze, viewing that property required a 500,000 deposit. But Luke Lee simply pulled out a gold credit card. No need for a deposit. I'll pay in full, right now. Chan Nhi immediately regretted her decision. Selling that villa would have earned her a 300,000 commission, and she had just passed it off to someone else. What stung the most was that she had always dreamed of marrying into wealth. Yet the real rich man had been right beside her all along. Unwilling to give up, she decided to act. That night, after drinking, she returned home and knocked on Luke Lee's door. Before she could even open it, Luke Lee scooped her up and tossed her onto the sofa. She thought things were about to get heated. Instead, Luke Lee looked at her with a cold expression. He wasn't fooled, he knew she was faking it. Seeing that her seduction had failed, Chan Nhi quickly tried to explain. I didn't mean to. But Luke Lee cut her off. I actually like women like you, pretending to be delicate and helpless. The two ended up talking through the night. The conversation grew so intense that by morning, Chan Nhi forgot she had work. She was rushing out the door when Luke Lee called after her. Why are you going to work? From now on, just stay home, cook and clean for me. She froze. Was this a confession? With a smile on her face, she turned back and headed to the kitchen to make breakfast. After breakfast, just as Luke Lee was about to head out, he got a phone call. It was the same taxi driver from earlier. His father's condition had worsened. The family needed money for urgent medical treatment. The driver's voice trembled as he pleaded. As long as it's legal, I'll do anything, just tell me what to do. Luke Lee smiled calmly. Don't worry, nothing illegal. All I need is some of your lifespan. With a snap of his fingers, the surroundings dimmed into darkness. Above the driver's head, a number appeared. 13 years, 57 days. Shocked, the driver asked, how much can that get me? Luke Lee explained his pricing. For those earning under 100,000 per year, he offered 300,000 yuan per year of life, about 3 times annual income. The driver bit his lip and made his decision. Then I'll sell 3 years. That'll leave me with 10, enough to see my son get married and start a family. Given his current salary of 150,000 a year, Luke Lee calculated, 3 years equals 1.35 million yuan. Luke Lee raised his hand, and a time purchase contract materialized. After signing, the driver received the money and let out a long breath of relief. But as he left, he stumbled slightly. Reality was harsh. There were just too many people in this world desperate and helpless. As Luke Lee turned to leave, a glass bottle suddenly shattered at his feet. Beside him stood a sickly-looking blonde guy who shouted, "You broke that, you better pay for it." Luke Lee smirked. "What's this? Blackmail?" The blonde man suddenly grabbed Luke Lee by the collar and shouted, "You broke my wine bottle. Pay me 1 million yuan. But Luke Lee responded with a cold smirk. With only 26 days left to live, you wouldn't have time to spend that kind of money anyway. The man froze. His pupils trembled. Because what Luke Lee said wasn't just a bluff, it was the truth. He had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer, with roughly a month left according to his doctors. Even if he extorted people, no amount of money could buy him a cure or time. Still skeptical, he gritted his teeth. Luke Lee calmly reached into his pocket and tapped his pocket watch. In an instant, the world around them dimmed. And right above the man's head, a glowing set of numbers appeared. His remaining lifespan. The man stared at the digits. Strangely, he didn't panic. He simply lit a cigarette and asked, "You tracked down a dying man like me. What is it that you want?" Luke Lee gave him a look of quiet approval. This one was smart. "I can give you more time, but in return, you'll become my hound." The man took a long drag from his cigarette. Then he exhaled slowly and knelt down without hesitation. "The name's Bang Hao. If it means staying alive, then fine, I'll be your dog." Luke Lee smiled, satisfied. He snapped his fingers, and a pillar of light descended onto Bang Hao. His lifespan, previously 26 days, surged to 126 days. Bang Hao immediately felt the shift in his body. The fatigue, the decay, the pain, all of it dulled, just slightly, but noticeably. Every last shred of doubt in his heart disappeared. He bowed his head deeply. Again and again, in front of Luke Lee. This was his first loyal follower. Luke Lee handed him 100,000 yuan in cash. Clean yourself up, your new life starts now. Luke Lee had a vision. To establish a lifespan trading organization that could operate in the shadows, but last long-term. Eventually, his ability would be exposed. He needed structure. He needed people. Later that day, Bang Hao returned, fully groomed and dressed sharply. Luke Lee nodded in approval and tossed him 2 employee contracts. You may make 3 requests before signing. But Bang Hao didn't even look at the papers. He took the pen and signed without hesitation. No conditions, no questions. He had already cut ties with his family. He had accepted death until Luke Lee gave him a second chance. That alone was enough. He wanted nothing more. Luke Lee was pleased. Looks like I chose the right man. He then gave Bang Hao his first assignment. Track down old Master Vin. A man once infamous for buying up years of life to recruit gifted talents. Through him, they would locate a world-class hacker. Luke Lee had a new plan. To build an exclusive time trading app, a marketplace for exchanging lifespan. But he needed a genius to make it real. Coincidentally, the previous night, the global news had exploded with headlines. World's strongest supercomputer hacked by unknown entity. Analysts speculated the hacker was terminally ill, trying to pull off one final stunt before death. Elsewhere, in a dark room filled with flickering screens, a man sat hunched over a keyboard, smirking as the world panicked over his cyber attack. He was about to push the final command when agony ripped through his chest. He reached for his medication, but the screen blinked red. Intrusion detected. Then, click, the lights dimmed, time stood still. Above his head, a timer began counting down. 10 days. A voice echoed from the speakers. Hello, Mr. Robert, your remaining lifespan is 10 days. If you wish to live, come find me.